Live from Downing Street. The Inside Story of Politics, Power and the Media by Nick Robinson. Read by Simon Shepherd. Forward. There is one question I am asked all the time. Not, what's the Prime Minister really like, or even, do you actually like politicians? Incidentally, I do. But, why do you stand outside in the rain and cold and dark late at night to do the news? Sometimes people are worried about my well-being. You looked freezing, they say. Sometimes they're bothered by the distraction of a policeman striding past after a shift change, or, as one red-faced copper once confessed, so that I can text my mate and say, look out for me on the telly. Sometimes it's because they are hearing not one live report on the events of a big day, but snatches of several, like the disembodied voices on the cross-telephone lines of old, as we TV correspondents line up on Downing Street, within touching distance of each other, and shout into our cameras to drown out the broadcasts of our colleagues. Irrespective of their particular concerns, what those who ask me this question want to know is clear. What on earth is the point of me being out there when I could be sitting with the presenter in a nice warm studio? I sometimes give the practical answer. It's closer to where I work than television centre or broadcasting house. Sometimes I explain that TV is as much about pictures as words, and the black door of number 10 is, of course, the symbol of power in Britain. Just occasionally, though, I admit that for me at least, there is another reason. It is the reason I have written this book. It's because I can. My job is to report on what those in power are thinking and doing, and on those who attempt to hold them to account in Parliament. I can only do it thanks to a struggle waged over centuries by journalists against politicians for the right to tell the public about the decisions being taken on their behalf. For the right, in other words, to broadcast live from Downing Street. For many years, Parliament didn't allow its debates to be covered at all. Those newspaper men who tried could be thrown in prison. Broadcasters never faced that danger, but they did have to fight for decades for microphones and cameras to be permitted to record the democratic process. In the early days of radio and television, there was a law against reporting anything that MPs had discussed within the previous fortnight, or might discuss within the next one. What was dubbed controversy was banned. Prime Ministers expected to be able to use the airwaves to speak to the electorate unchallenged and without their opponents having the right to reply. Elections went unreported. Our representatives could be neither seen nor heard by those they expected to vote for them. At times of national crisis, the general strike, Suez, the wars in the Falklands and Iraq, some Prime Ministers have sought to take over, others to control what is broadcast. They have been loath to accept that what is in their interests is not always the same as what is in the national interest. At these and many other times, the occupants of number 10 have complained about what they perceive as bias from broadcasters who declare themselves to be impartial. For their part, since the advent of radio early in the 20th century, politicians have had to come to terms with the demands of first the microphone and then the camera. They are now followed by them wherever and whenever they go. Interviews, which once rarely strayed beyond asking those in power whether they had anything to say, are now robust and confrontational. Broadcasting doesn't just reward those able to connect with the people listening or watching at home, it punishes those unable to perform on cue. Being good on the telly is now a necessary, if certainly not a sufficient, quality for national leadership. When I first joined the BBC in the mid-1980s, there were just 4 television channels, and no 24-hour news networks. News was delivered by a box in the corner, a radio, or a TV set. There was none on the internet, whatever that was, or mobile phones, which were the size of a brick and almost as heavy. Sky didn't exist, and the idea of blogging, tweeting, or putting messages on your Facebook wall would have made my head spin. This book recounts the story of the relationship between the men and women who wield power and those whose job it is to tell the public what they are doing. It focuses on the key milestones in the long and rocky forced marriage between politicians and broadcasters.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?